Hi YouTube world, hi YouTube subscribers. Sorry about that. I just had a knock at the door, so I had to stop my video, but it was almost 12 minutes long anyway, so that was a good place to start or stop. But I'm picking up where I left off, talking about money tips. Somebody had requested me to talk about that. So I'm just giving some tips that I've learned over the years or I've learned from others. These are money don'ts. And I had given 6 tips in the last video. I was just discussing don't be house poor for my 6th tip, which means like not just a house that you can't afford the mortgage for your income, but also if you're buying a house that was a bad investment that has a ton of issues like plumbing, electrical, roofing, like major things wrong with it. I'm not talking about maintenance issues because every house has that, but if it's constantly having these huge structural problems, then it might be time for you to sell your house. I don't know. So that would probably happen if you buy a house, you don't get it properly inspected, or you buy a house knowing it has all these things wrong with it and just like buy a house too fast because of whatever reason. You don't really do your research, or you have a bad real estate agent or whatever. Other things that can be living beyond your means, I talked about cars as well, but another thing is spending a ton of money on things that are short term, such as something like a wedding, like having a $50,000 wedding when you and your partner only make $60,000 a year is not practical. And honestly, it's one day, so I don't know. I never really understood spending a ton of money on a wedding unless you actually have the means. Then sure. I mean, obviously, if you have the money, you want to enjoy it. But if you're on a budget, don't go crazy spending insane amounts on things just because you think that's how it's supposed to be, or you feel pressured by somebody. It's especially when it comes to weddings, it's your day, so don't let people tell you how you should be spending your money on it, as far as like pressuring you into getting things you can't afford. And that could be for other things as well, like spending a lot of money on a vacation that's only going to last for a couple days when you really are on a tight budget. You know, don't live based on what other people tell you have to. You know your own financial situation, so don't be spending tons of money just because your friends can afford it or your family. That's good for them, but know what your budget limits are and stick to them. And it might not even be your family, or it might just be like you pressuring yourself, but try not to do that. So I'm going to give my 7th tip, which is don't spend the majority of your paycheck on things that are not good investments, that aren't going to matter in a couple years, that probably will be kind of useless in a couple years. So I'm talking about, especially as a girl, as females, we like to spend a lot of money on things like clothes and makeup that in 6 months or a couple years is no longer going to be good, is going to be basically worthless. So don't spend $200 on a pair of pants when you're on such a tight budget, especially if you're doing it all the time. That is a huge waste of your money. I wish I hadn't spent so much money on things like that. Or it can be whatever it is that isn't a good investment. You're spending too much money on it, whether it's going out to really expensive restaurants, really expensive bars, spending a ton of money on I don't know, gadgets or something that in a couple years you're never going to use again. So you have to be kind of smart with how and when you spend your money, especially the majority of it should be going to things that are going to be like a return investment over time. My 8th tip is don't impulse buy. So this happens a lot because maybe we've had a bad day, maybe there's a pushy salesperson, maybe we're like, I don't know, drunk or going through something and we need retail therapy, or we think, oh, I gotta buy this, it's on sale now, the sale only lasts till tomorrow or whatever. Especially if it's something that's expensive, you want to tell the pushy salesperson, I gotta think about this, I gotta talk to my spouse, whatever. Don't let them bulldoze you, and don't pressure yourself either. Like a lot of times when I go shopping, I won't buy something and then I'll think about it, and if I'm still thinking about it for like a week or whatever, go back and get it. But usually nothing's gonna happen to it if you just give yourself some time, and it might save you from buying things that you're like, oh, that was stupid, why did I buy that, or whatever in the future. My 9th tip is don't make big purchases or big expenses without doing the research first. So that can be all kinds of things. That can be picking a college that's way too expensive for you, picking a degree that doesn't have a good return investment on it, like not a lot of career potential. That can be having a surgery done without making sure it's in network with your insurance, or that you don't know the cost of what it will be. A lot of times insurance companies will have cost calculators. They're not 100% accurate, but it can kind of give you an idea, and will show you who's in network for you. So before you have a surgery, you should be researching it anyway if you're having a surgery, to see that your doctor or surgeon, your surgeon's good, but you should also be checking out the financial cost of that. You shouldn't buy a car or a house. This goes back to my 6th tip. Don't buy a car or house without researching. Don't walk into the first dealership and pick the first car that the salesperson tries to push on you. Look online. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of resources nowadays. So actually use your online tools. Talk to people. Do some research before you just invest in something that can potentially flip you upside down money-wise. Don't make those huge purchases out of like desperation. You want to be thinking and planning big purchases, okay? Then you're going to be in an even worse mess if you do that. If you don't do that, I'm sorry. And then number 10 is don't compromise your worth for money. And I know that's cliche, and some of you might be thinking I'm talking about like, I don't know, the sex industry or something, which yes, that could apply, but I'm sure there's some people in that industry that are happy and choose to do that and are doing it in a healthy way. But I'm talking not just about stuff like that, but just anything in your gut that doesn't feel right, whether it's whatever job it is and you're feeling like, I don't like what they're doing around here, I have some ethical concerns, or I wonder if I'm going to get like sued for something anything that's making you question if there's going to be repercussions is probably not a good job to take, especially if it's just too good to be true. Like, watch out for jobs like that. And it could be any industry in general, because if it's too good to be true, oftentimes it is. And if something just doesn't feel right, like whatever you're purchasing and a pushy salesperson is making you feel like uncomfortable, it's probably because there is something like off. So just listen to your gut and don't do things that you wouldn't do if you listen to your gut, basically. Number 11 is don't get high interest credit cards. Oh my gosh, especially a lot of clothing stores and stuff will be like, well, if you sign up for a credit card today, you'll get 10% off. Guess what? That 10% off is not going to be worth the amount of interest they're going to tack on in a couple months' time. That 10% off is going to be half of what the interest is. So don't fall for traps like that. Another thing is don't pay, this will be my 12th tip, which is don't pay your property taxes all at once if you have a mortgage. Add it on to your mortgage monthly payments. That way, when you do pay your taxes, you're not like, oh my God, I have to come up with $1,500 that I wasn't planning on, or whatever. That's not planning out well. So definitely, I recommend making it part of your monthly budget. That kind of goes along with like being responsible with money and stuff, you know, planning ahead. And then I had one more. So my 13th tip for money don'ts is try not to buy things that you're never really gonna own. Like, try to get out of renting an apartment as soon as you can. Try not to lease cars. Try not to lease furniture. Try not to purchase these things that you're going to wind up having to give back, and those things are not a good investment, and then they charge you so much more than it would be if you were to just buy it outright. So I don't recommend doing that, because that kind of gets you into even more of a bigger financial hole doing things like that. And even if I had the money, I would never like lease a car. I don't know. I mean, teach their own. If you have tons of money, go for it. But I just think it's kind of like a waste of money. But anyway. Yeah, so those are the last of my money don'ts. I'm going to make more videos. I have a ton of like shopping tips. And then I also have a ton of tips as well to increase your money. I'm not talking about like millions, but I'm talking about for those people that are barely making ends meet. And then I'm going to give tips too. I want to give tips about what to do when all else kind of fails financially, what steps you should consider. Okay, so stay tuned. If you have money don'ts, please comment below with your own stories or advice. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you.